Well, listen, before we get into the big fight this weekend between Bisping and GSP, first of all, how much has the sport changed in the last 4 years? Can GSP keep up with the current state of the sport?
I think GSP, when he was in his prime, I'm not saying that he's not in his prime now. Age-wise, he's still fairly young for the sport.
Yeah.
But when he was in his prime, it was GSP and everybody else. Remember how dope John Fitch was? John Fitch was beating Diego Sanchez. He was beating everybody. But when he matched up against George St. Pierre, it was just no way he was going to win that fight. And he had created that separation, not in 1 year, not in 2 years, but just multiple years of training with the best access he had to, Olympic-level wrestlers, Freddie Roach, highest level boxing coaching he can get. And, just all his coaches, John, his jiu-jitsu coach. He put himself in a great position, being selfish, rightfully so, to just focus on himself, being the very, very best. And that showed in Octagon. He can take anybody down. I still think to this day, him, Dominique Cruz, and potentially DJ, I would have to say that GSP has the best timing. Mm-hmm. His ability to take down multiple-time national champion wrestler John Cochet. He took down multiple-time national champion wrestler Johnny Hendricks. Took down freaking Purdue captain John Fitch. When it comes down to a wrestling match, maybe he won't take those guys down there, but when you incorporate proper jabbing, timing, slipping punches, he had a way of getting in on the legs and finishing strong, and I think that's something that Bisping has to really look out for.
So who wins the fight? Can he compete against a very large Michael Bisping?
I'm not even on a point where I'm trying to not make anybody mad.
Uh-huh.
It's just really hard to say. I think that the size advantage of Bisping and his volume, his pressure, and not only that, his ability to take a punch is going to keep him in the fight. I think George St. Pierre is a more skilled martial artist overall. I think he might not punch with as much volume as Bisping, but I think he's tough. He's shown, he was in a fight with Carlos Condit, nearly got finished with a kick, got his bearings down, finished the fight on strong. So these guys are both shown to be tough. His timing is going to be better. He's going to be able to take Bisping down. Bisping's obviously trying to play on the mental edge. You just want to take me down. Kind of use a reverse psychology to try to get him to, to stand up and bang with him.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to say, is a weight advantage going to play in effect for Bisping, making it more difficult to take down? Is the volume going to play in effect? It's very hard. It's a toss-up to me.
UFC welterweight champion Tyron Woodley with us here on the Anakin Florian podcast. So we're going to make a donation to a charity in your name if you can correctly predict your next opponent. And I pose it that way because I think most people believe in this mix of George St. Pierre, maybe Michael Bisping, Jorge Masvidal with a win over Stephen Thompson, and the RDA Robbie Lawler winner. Are you of the belief that your next opponent comes out of that mix or not necessarily?
I think my next opponent is going to be the winner of Bisping and George St. Pierre. I think that's my next fight. Victorious in that fight, I think you see me move up to a different weight class.
All right,
and it's tough for me to say because at one point in time, you look at 1, 2, and 3. I beat them. I had beat 1, 2, 3, 5, and if Kelvin Gastelum and Johnny Hendricks were in the mix, I beat them as well. Tarek Safadine, who just got bumped out. Dungyan Kim, who just got bumped out. People have a short-term memory on what my resume is and my finishing ability. Out of 17, 18 victories, 11 of those are finishes, 9 of those in the first round. Sometimes when you're fighting the actual number one contenders, which very few champions are doing these days and age, you're fighting the Stephen Thompson, you're fighting the Damian Maia. These fights aren't going to be blowouts. Sometimes it's a fourth quarter field goal that wins the fight. Sometimes it's a grind, and it comes down to the last straw. And if you can do that, you can come out fast and blitz somebody in the first round. You can be losing a fight and come behind and win, or you can pull out a close one. It's like bowling. Everything's not a strike. You got to be able to catch those spares here and there.
And I do think people tend to lose sight of what you have accomplished on paper. And I guess Rafael Dos Anjos made it a little bit easy on you with the call out for a potential interim belt, calling out a champion that has been as active over the last calendar year as any in the UFC. So, all right, before we let you go, I know your sons wrestle, but
that's a joke,
you got
by
something?
the way.
Well, no,
I think interim belts are a joke, to my opinion.
Well,
I wouldn't be proud to be one to carry around a fake belt.
And Kenny and I sort of disagree on the interim thing, but for a champion like you who has 4 times in a calendar year fought in title fights, it just obviously doesn't make a ton of sense. Hey, before I let you go, I know your sons wrestle, but it looks like they all play football right now. Is your schedule allowing you to see some of these games? Dude, they're crushing it.
Well, you know what? My sons are completely beasting right now. I got a 14-year-old son that weighs, he weighs 190. 190, plays running back, about 5'7". He's out there looking like Devontae Freeman, running people over, put up 18 points yesterday and touchdowns. I just went actually, that's where I'm coming from now. I'm going to visit all these private schools, so he's being highly touted out by all the private schools in St. Louis because he's just such a big athletic kid. And I got a 9-year-old who's probably the best running back in the country. His team's ranked 2nd or 3rd nationally, and once he hit that corner, nobody can catch him. So it's been a pleasure that I've been able to watch football games. And sometimes things are blessing in disguise. Had I been, competing and training to fight for UFC 217 in New York, I might have missed the entire season just due to, being in Florida, being in Milwaukee. But I've been able to be there. I've only missed 1 or 2 games all season. And, man, it's just a pleasure to go through this process with my sons. Nobody did that for me. My dad wasn't around. Private schooling, please, we had free lunch. I wasn't even getting a bag of chips on top of, getting a private school education. So I'm just excited to be in this position of my life where I can afford to send my son to the best education possible, and also just, kind of dictate his future and showing him early on, this is what you're going to do when you go to college. These are the decisions you're going to make in life, and just giving them a step ahead.
Are you flying in for UFC 217 this weekend or no?
Yeah. I'm flying in. Yeah,
I'm working the desk with him.
Appearances and stuff to do, and I'll be calling it. Not calling it. That's what you guys do. I need to quit saying that. I'll be at the desk analyzing it, as you guys calling it.
I'll be with you, buddy. I'll see you over there in New York.
All right, cool.
UFC welterweight king Tyron Woodley. This is our first show with Fox Sports, T. Wood, by the way, so I want to make sure we brought at least one A-lister today. So thanks for making the time, and we'll see you in a few days.
Congrats on that as well, guys.
All right,
Thanks,
buddy.
man.
Have a good day. We'll see you in a few days in New York.